Hi, my name's Leighton Jin. I'm the Director of Development for American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, also known as AmDocs. It's going to be March 21st to 25th in beautiful Palm Springs. I'm excited today. We have Sarah Remetch. She's the director of this documentary that is just gorgeous, and it's called Passing Through, and it's about Bombay Beach and the Salton Sea. If you see the trailer, I think you'll be as blown away as I was. It's just beautifully shot. But Sarah, can you talk to us about your film?
Yeah, I started filming it 4+ years ago. I originally started out just to make a story about a small town that was abandoned that got revived by a group of artists. And while I got more and more involved with the community and the town, I realized how many layers of stories were happening within this small 6 block radius. So it became a portrait of the whole town and the community and the power of art and the power of community, and also the dark side of people with sensitive creative souls.
Now, the theme for some documentary filmmakers, they go in attempting to make one thing, and then during the filming and everything's kind of evolves. Can you talk about that process for you of taking your idea and how that evolved into this I believe it's a feature length documentary, right?
Yeah, originally it was just going to be a pilot for a series that I wanted to start about different parts of the world with art that is unique to that area, art that it's affected by its environment and can be used to make change. And I was like, Salton Sea is perfect because there's this ecological disaster happening and the artists are bringing awareness to it, and we need to do something about it. So it started just with that, and then I just started meeting the people, and it's really beautiful, deep people, and getting involved, like going to the community meetings about saving the Salton Sea. um and it just turned into this rabbit hole that I went down where I want, and I had to leave a lot out actually because there's no way to cover anything, but I there became so many different stories that I wanted to tell as I was out there. I don't know if that fully answers your question.
No,
Is
it
there
does. It does.
Okay.
I mean, there's just so much about that. There's so many levels to that. Obviously went there for the art, and then we talked about the ecological problems there, and there's just so many great perspectives just in your trailer. That's just so fascinating. When's the first time you ever went to the Salton Sea and started learning about that area?
The first time I went, they have a thing every year called the Bombay Beach Biennale, and it's kind of evolved throughout the years, and now it's more like a whole seasonal thing. It changed during the pandemic, but my friend Sippy, I remember him telling me, he's like, you can buy a piece of property down there for like $1,500, and I'm like, man, that's cheaper than 1 month's rent. And I wish I would have done it then, because now it's almost having this gentrification effect, and things are now, the lots are like 25 grand, up to 50 or more. But he was telling me about this like interesting, crazy place where like now people are building these art installations down there, and they had this thing every year. So I went down just to check it out and fell in love with it. And it's kind of the effect it has on a lot of people. There's something about it, you feel like you're removed from the rest of the world. It's its own, it's almost like a microcosm for the rest of the world. Like this little community represents what humanity could be capable of if they work together as a community, but also shows like all the threats and problems that we're facing as a planet at the same time. So, but mostly I love the small community aspect of it. Like, you, instead of calling people, you just show up at their door. You just ride bikes around. And I mean, there's so much more to it than that. I'm not doing it justice, but you feel it's almost lawless. Not like you should go there and cause problems, but it feels kind of like no man's land, like less regulated, less fuzz of the world.
Right. But it sounds like a lot of freedom to be who you are rather than trying to, because sometimes you get in a big area, you have to try to fit in more so than just be. And that's kind of just watching the trailer, like I've only seen the trailer. I'm looking forward to seeing the full film, but just seeing the trailer, you just capture all that. I think it's a great trailer, so I think people are going to watch it. They're going to be excited to see this. Um,
Thank you.
and how far from when you first went there did you say this is going to be a documentary I'm going to do?
I'd say it was within the first. Well, it got interesting because the pandemic happened right in the middle of it. I started filming for a few months, and then it, people weren't going down as much for a while. But I mean, I'd say within the first 6 months of going down there, I was like, "There's way more going on than could fit in just one like episode of something." It's a feature.
Mhm.
I knew I already have had more than I could use for a feature, and then I still kept shooting. There's one season I didn't even go down because I'm like, I'm just gonna keep shooting more, and I need to. And there's still future stories. Now as you've probably heard, they've discovered that there's lithium
Mm.
under the Salton Sea, so they're gonna start lithium mining. So that's a whole other story that the next person could do for the next documentary. But there's just I would have never stopped filming if I was there every single day. I'd still go down, but yeah.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that lithium farming because they've been talking a lot about that. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's a whole other like a huge topic because lithium mining in itself is toxic, and they already
Mhm.
have this like toxic dust being blown around, and so it'll bring money to the area. It's which people probably need, but it might. I hope it doesn't cause too much environmental harm.
Right. Um, and this is your first feature, correct?
Yes.
What's that whole, what has that been like? First of all, let's talk about your career beforehand. Can you talk a little bit about your career? I know you do a lot of cinematography, which obviously shows in the trailer, but can you talk about your career and then the process that led to this? Because obviously it sounds like it's a departure from what you normally do.
It's not. Well, I wouldn't say it's a huge departure, but my career, I always did photography since I was a kid. And then I, I wanted the next challenge, which would be getting into motion picture. And I started as an assistant. I started as a film loader over 20 years ago. Film is coming back now, but for a while
Mhm.
it was gone. So when I started, we were still shooting only on film, and I would load the film mags for the cameras and assist on set. And then I just kind of moved my way up through the camera department and became a first AC, which is the focus puller and like runs the camera department. And I did that for like 13 years. And in that time, I got to work with a lot of really great directors. I worked with David Fincher and Mark Romanek and Spike Jones and Jonas Ackerland, and the list goes on. And great DPs like Kara Savitas and um other Sam Bear. But I learned a lot, like working on set. I wouldn't trade it. Some people kind of moved straight into cinematographer, and I'm glad I had all those years as an assistant. I should also say Chris Blauvelt because he trained me and he's speaking at AmDocs and he's like my mentor. Um, he started as an assistant too, and now he's a cinematographer. But I having all those years on set made it so you know how to communicate with all the different departments, you know what's possible, you're learning about everything while you're doing it. I'm working the camera, but I'm seeing how they're lighting and learning just how it works to make things. So I wouldn't trade that time. And then I evolved into I had always been shooting my own stuff on the side, so I just crossed the line and was only directing and shooting as of maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. And
And
I
then
work as a camera operator.
and then doing a documentary, that means a lot of interviews. And interview means you have to establish trust with your subject. Can you talk about that process for yourself with this film?
Yeah, I would say that it it paid off to spend more time down there. I at first, for example, there's one couple in the film, Sonia and Ernie. They used to own the bar called the Ski Inn in Bombay Beach, and Ernie just passed away recently. Rest
Mhm.
in peace, Ernie. But they at first, I come in and I heard they had all these great stories because they had been there forever. and I wanted them to tell their stories, and they wouldn't. They kind of avoided me. Like Ernie would be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and he'd sneak out the back of the ski-in, and I just kept showing up for like a year and became their friends, and I earned their trust, and then they would do an interview with me, and I'd cut a little thing and show her, and she'd be like, "Oh, that turned out good," and then I'm like, "Can I do another one?" And then after enough time, she's calling me saying like, "Hey, we're doing this thing right now, you should come with your camera." So it evolved to the point where they were inviting me. But I think it does show, that's one compliment I got from my friend Chris Blauvelt, was you don't hear or see me in the documentary, he said, but you can tell that they trusted me and that they were comfortable with me. And I think that only came from just spending time. There was one interview I did, he was only in town for 1 day, so we just kind of met and did the interview. But everyone else I spent time with, I knew their story. Because you see these people coming into Bombay Beach, like they come in for 1 day as a tourist and they take some pictures and leave, and they go on people's property without asking, and they're not really respectful.
Mm.
And so I think me proving I'm not like some Hollywood jerk and respecting them and their space and their story, I think was a valuable part of the interviews.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's instinctual in terms of interviewing people and just making them trust, because once they trust you, then they start to open up. And
Yeah.
like I said, only judging by this trailer, which I really love, is just you really got them to open up, and there was just some deep stuff in just this 5 minutes. I just can't wait to see the full feature length
Oh,
film.
thank you.
Um, some of the people you worked with, I'm a David Fincher fan, and you worked on Zodiac, correct? With
I
with a
did.
lot with a lot of titans and acting in that film. Can you talk about that experience?
There's so many stories that come up from working on Zodiac. Like big picture overview, one thing I will say is I have a lot of respect for David Fincher's, just a perfectionist to the thousandth degree. Like every little thing, like if there's a phone book in the background out of focus, it has to be that phone book from that city from that year, and every single page inside it has to be like exactly as it was printed, not just like a prop. And I mean, that's just like a silly prop example, but everything we, because Zodiac's a recreation of a real event. So, and now he does a ton of true crime stuff, but everything had to be very authentic. And I really respected his process a lot. It's kind of like sharpened all of our chops to work with him, because he's also like, you have to be on top of your game or else he'll call you out. So it made us very like ninja like camera crew. The cast was lovely, especially Mark Ruffalo. I don't know what kind of stories you want to hear, but like, and he probably never even made this public, but one of our caterers had to found out he had a brain tumor and had to
Oh,
take, like, was gonna have to take a lot of months off work to do the surgery. I just had a baby. And Mark, did I lose audio?
no, you're still there.
Mark did like put letters in all of our trucks to raise money for this guy, and like donated a ton of money of it, like himself, and just like a really good, wonderful person. And I don't know if like you have specific questions, but to me that was a formative movie. That's kind of like we all moved up in that movie, and it kind of launched the next phase of our camera career, I would say. And it
And
was
how was your? No, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Harris Savitas was the DP, who's also, he's passed away now. He's a legend. He's a brilliant cinematographer, and we're like not only a great person and lucky to know him, but like so lucky I got to work with him as well.
What from your experience with Zodiac played a part in this film? From working with Fincher and stuff like that, because it's kind of funny. I think there's some parts when I watch some of the shots, it does kind of remind me of something that you might see in a Fincher film in terms of just the framing. And I mean, there's just something about that just kind of brings you into it. That's that when we said that, I started to think that to me it reminded me. I don't know if it reminds anyone else.
Maybe, I mean, I never thought of it that way, because I'd say it's so opposite of working on Zodiac, because Zodiac,
Mhm.
we would like set, if it was a 5-page scene, we'd spend like an entire week on it. And we, like, you set it up in each angle, you're shooting 40 takes of it. And Bombay Beach, it's, you kind of just have to have your camera if something happens and then shoot it if it happens. There's no like preciousness of like setting up the perfect thing. I mean, some things I got to set up, but for the most part, it was just like being there and having a camera. I even downsized what I was shooting with. At first, I had this like full Panavision package and all these cases of lenses and all this stuff, and I did the whole thing. I had help here and there, but most of it I was doing by myself. So I just couldn't manage that much equipment. So I ended up going to a smaller run and gun kind of camera, and that, everything about that is like the opposite of the how intense and involved it was. Like Zodiac, we did months of camera tests before we even started filming, just to get the perfect paint color with the perfect wardrobe with the, like, because we were shooting on these new cameras, like first big movie on a HD camera to
Mhm.
first big movie on a HD camera to hard drive. There was one before that that was like HD to tape, but anyway.
No, that's great. I mean, and I'm a former journalist, and so I started transitioning doing video work. I feel weird saying it to you because your videos look so amazing, and mine are
Oh,
just,
thank you.
But no, but yeah, that's kind of the cool part of these documentaries. You have to be quick on your feet, and you have to capture these moments, and I think that's what makes a documentary so special. You're catching something real, and it's not planned. And sometimes when
Hmm.
you're there, it just makes the
Yeah.
moments.
I think especially there, people there, they talk about like mountain time or beach time. Like people there are definitely on Bombay Beach time. And I think if I were to have forced, like, we're setting up this crazy thing, it wouldn't have been received well. But just being there and spending time and like happening to have my camera with me is, I think, was the most organic way to kind of capture it. There's some other things that have been shot down there that are kind of capture like the Biennale or one weekend, and or just the art. And I think to really like get into the fibers of the people and the community, you had to just keep it more low key and have
Mhm.
less of an elaborate setup.
Yeah, I mean, I just love how it comes alive with just those little scenes. Just there's something
Thank
you
you.
see. It's so artistic, but then they're talking and it comes alive, and it just.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'm geeking out on this a little bit, but
thank
it's
you.
just
I
really.
that's This is my first interview, so that's nice to hear.
Um, how much do you think that stretched you just being a run and gun on this? Because I know you do a lot of a lot of the other stuff. You do have time, like you were saying, with Zodiac. How much did that challenge you, and what did that tell you about yourself as a storyteller?
The run and gun aspect of it, or
Yeah, just kind of always being on the ready, and
yeah,
that how did that affect you as a storyteller? Maybe that's a better way of putting
yeah. Well, I think a few things happened, but because sometimes I'd spend like weeks there at a time, and I would wake up and be like, I don't really have any plans. I don't know what I'm gonna shoot today. Like I felt like I'm not doing it right because I don't like But then just being there and spending time, you'd be like, oh, this is happening later, and then you'd be there for that, and I wouldn't have known about that if I wasn't already there. So just, I think immersing yourself in the environment was a big learning experience for me. If I do the next one, it's like I don't want to just go a few days here and there. I want to spend 6 months somewhere and really, you know, immerse myself in it. And then the other thing I was gonna say, oh, it's just that I never considered myself a journalist, but I had moments where now, because I feel like more a filmmaker and I like telling stories visually, but then all of a sudden there was times where I felt like, oh, there's a journalist side of me because I'm like, I'm gonna go to this town meeting, or I went to this museum and I found out this woman's mom owned the first bar in Salton Sea, and I'm gonna find her. And I like went to her house and interviewed her. It wasn't a huge part of the documentary, but I still want to put out her story somewhere. She's in it though. But I just found myself like chasing little clues about the history of the town, which you could do a whole thing just on that. But I think spending the time and made me kind of follow more of the journalist side of it too.
Well, that sounds awesome. It sounds like a great process to kind of go through because when we do stories, we do immerse ourselves. When I was as a journalist, so it's just
Hmm.
kind of exciting to kind of hear about all that. And then I'm going to ask you a technical question, but I might not be understand it that well. But how do you get that look, the way you shoot? And I don't know if it's something that you capture in the camera or you do it in editing, but it's just so beautiful, the shots and the way the movie looks. Can you just talk about a little bit of that process and see if you can
Well,
explain to a layperson like me?
I guess it depends on what about the look you're talking about, because I did have a lot of specific notes. I didn't do the coloring. Like, I did the original edit, and then I had a post guy who helped me finish the edit, and we worked with a colorist, and I had really specific notes and examples on the coloring. So if you mean like the exterior shots, there's some
Mhm.
tones and feel to those that we dialed in. But and then I shot some 8 millimeter, some analog film that I think is fits in with that environment. But I don't know what else. I mean, some of the stuff, like the beautiful stuff of the girl on the water, and some of the other things, that's when I first started with the Panavision lenses that have these beautiful flares, and I shoot with them whenever I can. They just make certain light bloom, and these vintage uncoated lenses. I have a guy there. If you want to go super geeky, I have a guy named Guy McVicker at Panavision is the lens guru, and he does like custom coatings on lenses, and you can pick like different coatings and combine them and have a look that becomes completely custom to you. So we did some lens tests, and I picked lenses that I wanted to shoot with. So my whole first portion of shooting down there was with that, and I think that does beautiful things to the light and the sun and the flares and all of that. And then after that point, everything was on a Canon C300 because that's just better for documentary run and gun, but still with good lenses, and a lot of it I would say is in the coloring,
Wow. I mean, it's
color
just
grade.
yeah, it just looked. I mean, it was just like beautiful. Like I felt like I was watching a piece of art and then it was coming alive. I
Oh,
mean, that's how I felt. Just just kind of looking at that trailer.
thank
So.
you. I guess I could say one thing about what you just said is that when I first started it, and then I got to a certain point, and then I found out that there was another but totally different Bombay Beach documentary that was finished like a year before I started or something, but it hadn't come out yet. And I
Mhm.
almost was like, "Oh, if there's already one, what's the point?" Like, I almost didn't finish. What made me excited to keep shooting it was to try to make it an art film, like within the documentary. So there are some segments where it just kind of goes, if you're entering, like one example is you're going into Angler's Grove, which is somebody's art installation. And I shot like a little almost art film within that space. And then, the girl on the aerial thing on the water. And there's a few other segments that just live within themselves that are sprinkled throughout the movie, and that's what made me excited to keep shooting, was to be like, well, I'm gonna add my own kind of art film within the documentary, if that
I mean,
makes sense.
no, no, it
It's
makes sense because it really does the film justice. You're talking about, I think some people do the journalistic thing about the ecological issues in there, but you're also doing this art community, and you're watching this art community in something that looks like a piece of art as a film that kind of blows my mind. I think it's just like that's why I just thought it was so beautiful and just
Thank you.
so remarkable. What's going to be next for you? What's the next project you're thinking about?
mm, it's a good question, because now, well, originally I would have loved to have made this kind of um like the backbone of this. I would have wanted to make a series, which is how humans make art because we're aware of our own mortality and it's something that can live on beyond us, and how art in different like environments, art how art's different in specific areas and in specific environments, and how art can also be used to make change. So I wanted to do a whole series. So Bombay Beach is the first one. I'd like to explore other areas. But after doing a whole feature, you realize what would work and what wouldn't work for the next one. So might revisit that a little bit. There's one I really, really wanted to do that I found out someone else already has the rights to. I don't know
Mm.
if it's worth mentioning, but and then I'm also, I'm doing some like music video and stuff like that right now. But for the next documentary, I still haven't. I want because I have to care. Like the for me to really put everything,
Hmm.
because I put everything into it. I have to be really personally interested in the story, and I don't want to just make the next documentary that I know like festivals will want, or I know like streaming would want. I want to also really, really care about it. So
Hmm.
I'm waiting for that one thing to where I'm like, ooh, I have to tell that, and hopefully something unique that there isn't already like a bunch of other documentaries about.
So before we go, that brings up another question. How do you toggle that? This is a very personal film for you because you put so much of your heart and soul into it, but then you also do these commercial things. And not that you don't put your heart and soul into them, but it's somebody else's vision most of the time, I
Mhm.
assume. Can you talk about toggling those two worlds, something commercial and then something that's so personal and means so much to you? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't think it was a huge toggle, or it was just kind of a no-brainer. I would have jobs and my so it's kind of like I didn't have a life for 2 or 3 years during the going through the footage and editing. Because whenever I wasn't working, I was like, oh, good, I finally have time to work on this. So then I'd spend like nights, weekends,
Hmm.
holidays, working on it. But and then when I was done, I was like, what am I going to do with all this free time? Because all my free time went to that. But it kind of wasn't, it didn't seem like a strain. It was just, uh, I just, I had to finish for my own. They say, like, I've heard other creatives talk, like, what's one advice you could give to other people starting out? And they say, always finish. Like, even if nothing comes of it, like, always finish. So I just kept going forward till I, till I finished. It's still not finished. I mean, it's finished, but I have to like do a few things before I send the DCP.
When it comes to art, nothing's really finished, is it?
Right.
In
But
a
a
lot of
good my
ways.
yeah, my dad told me, he said a good artist knows when to quit though.
Well, I will
Not
agree
quit,
with them.
but like when to stop.
Right. And then, I'm going to throw in one more thing. Just working with Miley Cyrus, I think that was the last project that's listed on IMDb. Can you talk about a little bit about that? Because she had a great weekend at the Grammys this past weekend. And
Yeah. It's funny because I mean, as an assistant and then this last time as a camera operator, I've actually worked with her like 3 times. One time she was still really a lot younger and had like a clothing line coming out. I don't want to mess it up, but it was Kohl's or some chain, and we did a commercial for that. But I remember her being super cool. I had this really hard shot that if you didn't know focus pulling, you wouldn't know how hard the shot is. It was like she was holding a handy cam and it started like macro shot on the screen, and the dolly tracked back like super fast, and you had to follow focus on the screen and then at some point rack back to her face and then like keep. And I didn't have the proper remote focus, so I mean I was doing it on this, they call it a speed crank, that's all. But I remember her knowing, she was like, dude, like good job. Like she knew, and she worked with me because I'm like, if your hand moves 1 inch, it's out of focus. So she was like really like a good team player and worked with me. And when I nailed it, she was like high five, like just a cool, down
wow.
to earth, like bro, dude. And then I worked with her again on it was like either she was a cameo in Snoop Dogg's video or he was a cameo in her video, but it was Miley and Snoop. So that was fun. And then this last time was great. It was those backyard sessions, and Marcel Rev was the DP, and I was operating the dolly camera. And Marcel Rev is the DP for Euphoria, which is the most beautiful show on TV right now. So it was a pleasure to work with him, and we shot all on film and 35 millimeter, and she's cool. She's like super professional, but not diva, not any of those things. I don't know if that was your question, but
No.
she deserves everything good that's coming to her. I don't know her personally. It's not like, but just as a crew person, you can
Mhm,
respect when you're working with good talent. And it
mhm.
was freezing and she was not complaining about being cold. And she just, and it's live. Like we were recording live audio. She was really performing the songs. It wasn't lip sync. So she's really talented.
Yeah, well, it sounds like amazing. You have an amazing career and you have amazing film, and looking forward to seeing it and what the future has in store, and all the work that you're going to do.
Thank
I
you.
think that's going to do it for us. We're running out of time here, but reminder for everyone: American Documentary Animation Film Festival is March 21st to 25th in beautiful Palm Springs, California, not far from Bombay Beach. So maybe you watch your movie and you want to go out there and see it for yourself. And we hope you guys hope to see you guys. Tickets are on sale now. Get them quick. They're moving very well this year. So looking forward to seeing everyone. Sarah, thank you so much. What a pleasure, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you very much.